Proud to have Dave Poulin on today. Poulin, the Bruins great, the Flyers great, and finished up with the Washington Capitals. I see you've been making the rounds. NHL Radio, Senators podcast. Thank you for slumming with us today, Poulin.
Well, you know what? I think I'd be a prime candidate for the Manscaped because when you have 250 stitches in your face, you have to plan to shave. You don't just shave. You plan to shave. So we laugh about it, and I had good plastic surgeons, trust me, Rod, and thankfully I did. Of course, as a Philadelphia Flyer, one of the primary positions you have to fill is a good plastic surgeon, correct?
Absolutely. Poulin, that I've never heard that one before. Planning your shaving. I get it. Well, I would invite you to try Manscaped. I appreciate it. Literally, man, I don't even know necessarily where to start with you other than let's start this because you're a Leafs fan from Timmins, Ontario. Knuckles Nyland said on this show the other day that the Leafs have tuned out Sheldon Keefe. Do you think Knuckles was just trolling as the Habs guy, or is there something there?
I don't think they've tuned him out, Rod. I think something that was very smart was changing out the assistant coaches and bringing in Guy Boucher and Mike Van Ryan. And I think that's an underappreciated part in the NHL is the role of the assistants and how they can augment the head coach. And you don't have to look very far to see championship teams that have changed out assistant coaches, and start with Tampa Bay and John Cooper. And it's a great way to get fresh new voices in with different experiences, but also to challenge the head coach. And in that opening game against Montreal, when they pulled their goaltender with 4 minutes left, 6 minutes left, and they're down by 2 goals and scored right away, that's Guy Boucher. That's the push and the prodding, because the head coach is so immersed in what's happening in a game. He needs assistance within a game to bring points like that to him. So I don't think they've tuned him out. I don't. And, first of all, there's 10 or 12 new Leafs this year. So, almost the whole team is new. You'd be talking about the core 4. I don't think that's their choice to tune him out. I really don't. And quite frankly, as much heat as the core 4 has taken over the last handful of years for their playoff lack of success, they've produced during the regular season at an outstanding rate. They haven't been able to do it in the playoffs, and it's not their fault the way the team is structured.
Yeah, interesting. I watched them here the other night in the Panthers home opener. The Panthers won 3-1, and I couldn't believe, A, how many new faces there were and how many new young faces there were, and then that there wasn't any real pushback or sandpaper in their game because I thought they wanted it. Now, the other thing is, the reason I brought up that I heard you on NHL radio is here in Florida, there's not a lot of NHL talk, so I listened to my guy Scott Laughlin on there, and I love him. And it was great having you on. And they talked about the Oilers with their 3 too many men penalties the other night. I guess that tied an NHL record. And Gabby said it's because they're distracted. They're all on the iPads. They're not paying attention. Is that a thing now?
Tell you what, I would go with, I believe the way Montreal handles, I do a lot of Montreal games. You're allowed on the iPads during the commercial break only. And I think that's the way to do it. I really do. I think that's a compromise. If you want to see something, wait till commercial break. There's 3 of them in a period. And, as much as John Tortorella made a big thing of that, there is a group of players that learn that way. That's how they learn. They've grown up learning visually. That's fine. But I'll take you to Winnipeg and take you to Josh Morrissey handing a stick to Adam Lowry after Lowry had broken one on the ice. And that led to a critical goal for the Jets and a win for the Jets. If Morrissey's got his head buried in an iPad, he's not watching the game. I want you watching the game. I want you invested in the shift in front of you. I want you to know what's going on. I want you ready to go on the ice. I don't want you looking at the TV, at an iPad. I simply don't during a game. So I understand it's important to some players. I would do what Montreal has done and limit it to commercial break.
To be honest, I would even wait till the intermission. Is that a possibility, the intermission, or could they not wait that long?
No, I think in today's learning style, they're so used to the short, quick clips that I don't mind it if you've got the minute at going to it at that point. And, then you've got like 6 minutes, 4 minutes, 4 minutes, and the end of the period. So you can squeeze it in. attention span's not that long for some players. It's simply not. To keep it fresh in their mind, I think that's an excellent option.
You know, I'm watching the furor and listening to it out of Calgary, which I think is unfortunate for Ryan Huska. They haven't even played 10 games. I'm seeing what's happening in Edmonton and every market for that matter. And in a way, we're the problem. You, me, we fuel it. We talk about it. There's so many. But what did you say? You're observing, not opining. When do you switch?
Yeah. I know. Well, you know what? It's early. And so I did say that. I said, at this stage, I'm observing. I'm a fan just like everybody else is. And, a night when there's 16 games like there were on Tuesday night. And by the way, I'm working one of those 16 games because everyone in the industry is working one of those 16 games. And you can't follow everything real closely. So you catch up and you look and you see early trends and you watch it. But you also make a note. Okay, I'm going to follow that closely because I may not have an opinion on that yet, but something's going on there. And I wasn't one of the guys that jumped on board that said just because Daryl Sutter was gone and Ryan Huska was in that everything was going to be all good. And I think that's too easy of an out for the players, Rod, to say, well, it wasn't our fault. Well, guess what? It was some of your fault. And, it wasn't just the coach. And so I think the players have to take responsibility. I laughed on my intro when you talked about players-only meetings. When I was a captain, Rod, I grew to hate a players-only meeting when someone suggested. So what eventually happened was I'd say, we're having a players-only meeting. By the way, I'm talking and you're all listening. I don't want to hear you because inevitably the first guy to speak would be the one that should be spoken to the most in the room. And he'd have heard something and he'd be repeating something he heard in a team meeting before and think that was going to solve everything. And I think that's a pretty dire move. Well, dire move after one game to call a team meeting. That's something that's been brewing long before that game, Rod, and it just wasn't aired out. The game gave them an excuse to air things out.
Well, I was remiss in asking you that because I've put this to people. And I've called games for 20 seasons in the CFL and 20 seasons in Major Junior. I've been around a lot of teams. When we get to the players-only meeting, it's over. Like, it's not, I don't know. My question is, what teams turned it around because they had a meeting without the coach there? I've never heard of it.
I think I don't know about turn around. I think there are things that you have to address in the locker room without the coaching. I don't think you tell anybody you're having a players-only meeting. That's the media standing outside saying, well, the coach is in that meeting. But I do think, I'm thinking of the teams I played on in both Philadelphia where the leadership group was so strong around me with Brad Marsh and the dear departed Brad McCrimmon and Mark Howe and Timmy Kerr and all those guys. Then we got to Boston and we had Ray Bourque and we had Cam Neely and we had Gary Galley and we had guys in that locker room that could take care of things that, quite frankly, the coaches couldn't or didn't even know were going on. So time and place, but not the answer.
Yeah, fair. Well, look, I was watching, call me a nerd if you will, but 87 Stanley Cup final and highlights, and I saw Chychrun. And the reason I bring that up is I see him all the time. He's on Panthers television. You got a story about Jeff Chychrun at all from Philly days that I could use on him, Dave?
Yeah, he's actually responsible for one of these scars we were talking about earlier on a pass that went off the ledge on the board in training camp and ripped my face open. So I do have a story about Jeff Chychrun, but I see Chick now in the buildings. It's great to see him. And, I think about him and I'm watching Jacob in Ottawa now, and I'm thinking of a young Jeff Chychrun and coming in and really changing the face of the late 80s team. So he and Gord Murphy, and there was an influx late, not the initial group, with Tocchet and Zeslin and the Sutter twins in the early 80s, but later on in the 80s when Jeff came in and way too nice a guy to be a tough guy. He was really tough, but way too nice a guy.
Well, this is why I love these chats with you. Last year, Stanley Cup final, we're in the press box, and I hadn't actually met Jeff Chychrun before. And he pops down beside me. This would not surprise you, and you know him this well. I'd never met him. And he goes, Rod? I'm like, yeah. My dad's from Good Eve, Saskatchewan, just outside Melville. Big Rider fans. All of a sudden, we talked the whole game about CFL stuff and that. And by the way, his kid, he's so proud of Jacob. Way more offensive side in Jacob than his dad. Am I right or wrong on that?
No question about it. Way more offensive upside. But here's the key to Jeff. He knew his game. You know, he had the long range, he had the long reach. He was tough. He was a good stay-at-home defenseman. But he knew that, and that's why he fit in and played well.
Oh, yeah, those were some great teams. I think the 80, sorry to bring it up, pick a scab, but are the 87 Flyers not the best team that never won a Stanley Cup? I think they are.
Well, you took one of the best teams to 7 games, so that would be your argument. I actually talked to Heck the other day, Ron Hextall, and because I had proposed him as a solution to the Kuznetsov slow penalty shot situation, we were asked if we thought there should be a rule, and I said, no. And I actually called and told Hex that I said this on TV. I said, all I do is put Hextall in net for one of those penalty shots, and that would be the end of it with Kuznetsov, because he'd meet him somewhere around the top of the circles, and he'd take care of that.
He's not the only guy doing it, though. I can't stand it. Goalie guy here, I liked what the Flower did to Bedard, coming out and tripping him when Connor tried it in the shootout in the preseason, and I'm a Bedard guy. But I just... back to the pressure early on in the season, just on the Flames, because I've spent so much time in Calgary the last 2 years. They're like lighting Huberdeau on fire now, and Kadri and all these guys. And I'm like, it's a revolving door of players and nothing changes. And I look at what Kachuk's done here in Florida. It's a culture thing. I believe that it is. When are they going to stop blaming the players in Calgary specifically?
Well, the players as individuals is one thing, but as the makeup of the group is a total different thing. And you took out Gaudreau and you took out Kachuk, and they were part of the group that made it happen. And you don't know what trickle-down effect they had on other guys in the room, maybe Erasmus Anderson, whatever it may be. But they've changed over some of the key pieces, and it does take time, but it is up to the guys in the room to get it done. You're dealt that hand, and Huberdeau didn't ask to leave Florida. He was part of it. He goes to Calgary. It hasn't worked out for him there yet. Kadri leaves a prime situation in Colorado where he fit perfectly, and they've missed him there. So it wasn't like they all went there for the right reasons because, they just ended up there through trade or because that they followed the money there or whatever it may be. But the makeup of the group as a whole hasn't worked yet. And it's still early. And to a man, the Jacob Markströms of the world also have to step up and do what they did when the team was rolling along well. So that's going to be a tough one. I didn't think it was going to be an instant turnaround because of the coach, and it's proven so far that it hasn't been.
Yeah, I think that we can all agree that it is on the players. I mean, I don't have a problem with the calling out the players, but anything heat at Ryan Huska, I think, is really unfair. And I guess my last question for you is, I just heard that the Oilers are instilling this defensive system that's taking them a while to catch on to, and I hope they are. It's why they didn't beat Vegas last year. Is that a thing in Edmonton, that they're changing their style of play, and that's been a problem latching on to it?
Maybe a little bit easier to answer it that way. Once again, they miss a healthy Matthias Ekholm. I think when he plugged in last year and they were rolling along so well, he didn't come back in full health, and they maybe rushed him back a little bit. That could be part of it. But once again, that team has a lot of the right pieces in place. You need to save as well. And the goaltending is going to be a question until it's not. And last year it wasn't because of Stuart Skinner, not because of Jack Campbell. And Campbell had a good camp and came back ready to go. But you need to keep saving at the right time. And, there is a side of having two of the best players in the world where you do build a dependence on them. And, when times are critical, you tend to look that way in the locker room. And, that's just human nature. You look to two of the best. One of them is out right now, and they have to produce at such a high level on an every night basis, but it's up to the rest of the group. And they've got a good supporting cast. I'm a Zach Hyman guy. Evander Kane has to step up right now. And the guys that they put around them, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, another easy one to say, okay, Connor McDavid's not there. You've got to play better.
It's not a bad thing to have to learn these lessons. Dave, I really appreciate these chats all the time. I know you're busy. Thanks for this. Enjoy the hockey.
Always good to join you, Rod.
Thank you. Dave Poulin, Flyers great, Bruins great from TSN.